Hello and welcome to another episode of the Punt Return Podcast. Week 16, we're nearly at the end of the regular season, and I'll introduce my co-host in a minute. But week 15, just the horrendous bad beats / amazing wins, depending on what side you're on, for gamblers on the weekend. The Philly-Washington spread, if you took Washington at every point in that game, you were on the right side. You did everything right, and you lose that. That is one of the worst beats I've ever seen until the Atlanta-San Fran total. If you're on the under with 5 seconds to go, you've got 9 points or whatever it is. You can take an Atlanta score, and then for that to be returned off the kickoff after all those laterals for another one. That's probably the worst one I've ever seen. Nick, welcome. And is that the worst one you've ever seen?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, you don't often see that type of last-second touchdown play on defense. We had it twice on the weekend, and it was amazing football, really. But yeah tough beats for some punters.
Yeah, and James, were you on any of those? And is that the worst one you've ever seen?
There's been a couple. I think back to that Arizona-San Francisco game.
Yeah, that was
similar one. Yeah, this was a really annoying week. Like, a lot went right from a sort of forecasting point of view, but Jets. I teased the Jets out, and they lost by half a point. I teased the Bears out; they lost by half a point. So
they nearly had the freak lateral as well. If Horsted, their tight end, lateral to Allen Robinson, it would have been one of the all-time great covers.
And mind you, like, the Carolina Panthers cover as well was quite ridiculous.
Yeah.
They were down by about 20 in the fourth quarter and ended up covering, or at least pushing.
Yeah.
So some crazy ATS results in the week.
Yeah. So there were three just mind-blowing results, and then. Speaking of three Sunday games this week. So no Thursday night football. So get all your Christmas shopping done tomorrow on Friday. We've got 3 Sunday games this week. They're all meaningful as well. Like, it's just great for Australians to have sort of NFL Sundays for once or twice a year. So it's really amazing. So, enjoy that Sunday. We're looking forward to it. And any final thoughts from you guys before we get into Week 15 results?
Look, just a quick one from me. I think, we've been talking all year. We've had some really great feedback about the podcast in its kind of new format after last season. If you do want us to keep going for next year, let us know. Get on Twitter, get on Facebook, Stats Insider, leave some iTunes reviews. We have to start planning for next season soon. We're nearly at the end of this year. So get on board if you want us to come back and leave us some reviews.
Yeah, definitely agree there. And, we're not touts, or we're not paying for picks or anything like that. We're, charging people for picks like, some frauds out there like Vegas Dave or whatever. We're just talking about football and applying some stats and a little bit of narrative here and there. Like, obviously the narrative about Oakland last week was a horrendous one, but, it's just, we're just talking about games, and the results have just been a sort of a cherry on top for us, in terms of, the results this year being especially good across the board. So, I think it's definitely meaningful for people to listen and share the love around and spread it and tell your mates about it. And because the more we get, the better, this show will get. Cause I think we've had a really great seasons. We've really built on last season's format with Daz, and I think it's, the show's been great this season, boys. So, kudos to you. And, speaking of results, Week 15, we'll start on a sour note. No good in the lock of the week. The Tennessee-Houston game, that should have had about 60 points. There was about a bazillion red zone turnovers, that especially one that resulted in Tennessee not scoring, and then it was like a 14-point turnover. So that was, not as bad as the Atlanta San Fran, but, it wasn't the best result. 10-5-1 now for the long shots, for the lock of the weeks, this season. But long shots, Nick, you continue your golden run.
Yeah, it's been a good year. I had a couple of down weeks where I whiffed on a couple, but Chris Carson, as I said, kind of forecast him to have a big game. He did. 110 plus rushing yards at $2.75 was very handy.
Yes.
Especially given the week that I had 1 and 2 on the best bets.
Yeah, and certain bookmaker down here had Chris Carson for 120 plus rushing yards at 550. So that was a good week, a good result after the horrendous week previously on my player props. So that's great. I didn't go good on long shots, but we've come to expect that. Best bets 3-1 for me. I doubled down on Buffalo plus 1.5 Buffalo money line. So that was big. Thanks to the Bills. Just some Josh love from one Josh to another. Thanks, Josh Allen. Minnesota Chargers overs as well. Nick, I know you followed me in on that one. That was a good result.
Yeah, talk me into it. So I'm happy with that.
Yep.
But you should take some credit. You did talk about Darius Slayton to score for the Giants, and he got up. So So, it hasn't been all bad for you.
Yeah, true. It wasn't too bad. But the best punter last week was James. I feel like he needs to be called Rocks or Diamonds James because every week when he does decide to do some weekly bets, it's either 3-0 or 0-3, it feels like.
Which is why I stick to the futures.
But very quietly, you're having a decent season on the best bets, on the game bets. I'm pretty happy with what you've done the last 6 or 8 weeks.
It's frustrating because I like those 3 last week a lot, and I just didn't have the profits to show for it, and that's really frustrating. Like your epic run earlier in the year, Nick, in terms of when you don't have the record to show for it in the books, in the wallet rather, that's when it gets really frustrating. So as good as those were, didn't play them. So disappointing.
That's okay. Yeah. Other takeaways from week 15 that aren't results related or gambling related. My biggest takeaway from week 15 is just how much fantasy football sucks. I hate it.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
I absolutely hate it. Every year I'm like, I'm not doing it. Then I get texts from mates like, oh, join this league. And because you have a podcast or whatever, the pressure's on. No one wants to trade with you. You just you just cop so much crap, and I'm over it. I think I'm done with it. I'm going to maybe just focus on DFS next season 100%, but I'm completely over fantasy football. I'm done with it. It's completely broken me. I believe it's the Antichrist of sport.
Nick, can I just jump in at that point and shout out to Rudy if you're listening?
Rudy, well done, mate.
My serious takeaway though is the defensive player of the year race is really fun. I think maybe Stephon Gilmore has pretty much locked it up, but TJ Watt had a great game. Danielle Hunter, who James tipped up at $34, I think back in week 3, I think he's up there as well. Obviously Nick Bosa had a great month that kind of catapulted him into that conversation. It's just a real tight race. Aaron Donald is always thereabouts just because he's just quadrupled teamed every single week and still makes plays. But yeah, I think Stephon Gilmore has locked it down. I don't know, maybe if TJ Watt can have a massive game, it'd be pretty cool for a family to have 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards. That would just be really fascinating, I guess.
Also cool that the defensive back wins it as well. That doesn't happen very often. So
yeah,
in terms of Gilmore.
Yeah, he lived inside Andy Dalton's head last week. So yeah. Nick,
Watt just looks like he's having so much fun as well at the same time. Just like JJ, just looks like he's loving every minute out there.
Yeah, and a shout out to Dallas fans. You guys, Taco Charlton, who's not even on your team anymore. You took him over TJ Watt. Well done to the Cowboys and the clapper there and Jason Garrett. Anyway, Nick, what's your biggest takeaway from Week 15?
Oh, I agree with you about fantasy football. I'm going to come third and second in my 2 major leagues this season, and it's just heartbreaking after all the effort and time you spend on it to build a really good roster and you win every week, and then to not win it is just is heartbreaking. Yeah. But what else is heartbreaking is Josh Gordon. How does this keep happening? I think like a lot of NFL fans, I was really looking forward to seeing Josh Gordon back out in the field this year and really being a stable kind of presence for one team. He hasn't really done that at all. He hasn't been a stable presence for 1 or 2 or 3 teams. So, for this to happen again, I think that's probably it for Josh Gordon. I can't see him coming back from this one and playing again in the NFL. You guys?
I feel sorry for him, actually. I generally I think addiction is it's hard, man. It's so hard. I don't know. I don't have an addiction, but I know people that have suffered, not drug addictions, but other addictions, and it's just so hard. You just have the tiniest relapse and it can just, especially in this, if Josh Gordon entered the league in 10 years, he would have had half the suspensions he is because marijuana will eventually be legal and all that sort of stuff. So I feel like he's been a little bit hard done by the NFL at times, but also, it is just hard with that addiction.
It is hard, and I completely agree with you on addiction. It is very difficult. At the end of the day, they're the rules, I guess, and it's just, It is tough luck sometimes. The other thing, and on a bright note, Drew Brees, he now leads the NFL in career yardage and touchdown passes. Surely he has to be in the greatest of all time conversation, up there with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. I know he doesn't have the rings; he's got 1, but if potentially wins another one this season, even if he doesn't, the fact that he leads in both those categories, I think, is pretty incredible.
How many MVPs has he got? 0.
Yep.
Come on, mate.
Yep.
Peyton Manning's got 5. Peyton's got 4 Super Bowl appearances, 2 rings. Only quarterback to win 2 rings with 2 different teams. Took 4 different head coaches to a Super Bowl. It's 14 times All-Pro. Drew Brees is only 1. Also took Peyton less games and pass attempts to get both those records. So, I mean, I like Brees. I think Brees. I honestly, if Brees played with like Belichick for his career, he'd have like 5 or 6 rings easily.
I'm not saying he's number one.
Yeah, I definitely. He's on my Mount Rushmore.
In that conversation, at least in terms of the quality of player that he is, then he has to be in that conversation.
Yeah, he's on my Mount Rushmore. I don't know where he sits for James.
I've got that sort of annoying greatness is a broad church. So I think there's room for all of these guys, and we should appreciate their like sublime brilliance. Making the distinctions really hard. I love Brees. I like him as a person as well. I think he's a really cool dude. And how can you deny Brady six MVPs and 6 Super Bowls? And Manning was just stunning. And despite being pretty unconventional as well. Yeah, 3 greats, just superb players.
In terms of like per centimeter, Brees is up there. Like in terms of like seriously, that to be that good at that height as well. Like, I know people overrate the height, and we joke about like Russell Wilson, but like it's a clear disadvantage to be like that tiny. Like when you Cam Newton, you can just run over people, and when you're Peyton or Rodgers, and you can kind of have time and see over linemen. Like Brees is for his size and to play in the league for so long and still be doing it at his age. Like it is pretty nuts.
I think his pure skill is unbelievable.
I've probably preferred to watch him as a player than the other two. Like I think he's quite sort of elegant the way he plays, the way he moves.
It's like a ballerina.
Yeah, exactly. That's well put.
Yeah, that's for me. I thought that was just great to see on the weekend.
Yep. And James, what's your takeaway from week 15?
My takeaway is that now every NFC contender has a really ugly loss on its resume. So New Orleans and San Francisco both have lost to Atlanta. Green Bay lost to the Chargers. Minnesota lost to the Bears. Now, point differential notwithstanding, Seattle might actually have the best resume of all in the NFC. They've got their losses are to Baltimore and the New Orleans Saints, obviously 2 very elite teams, and the Rams, which was on the road and off short rest. So this NFC fight is wide open. Like we've got 3 or 4 or 5 really, really, really good teams, any one of which can still be in the Super Bowl. So this is brilliant, an absolutely brilliant fight there.
It is. I think people are sleeping on Minnesota a lot. I know Kirk Cousins' primetime stats, I'll get to that later on, aren't great, but I don't know. I feel like the last 6 weeks has been pretty good.
Oh, also, but the only thing, I guess we'll get into Minnesota section, the Dalvin Cook injury really concerns me though. Like it really does. It's the breakdown at a sort of a wrong time of the year for Minnesota.
Running backs don't matter though.
No.
I'm kidding.
No. And I bring that up later with Cousins in terms of play action as well. Like that's very reliant. His numbers very much speak to play action. So that could play into it. Yep.
I was just trying to bait you on analytics chat, but all good. We don't have time.
I love an analytics chat, but the running back one explodes my head.
Yeah, it is. Also, I just want my other biggest takeaway from week 15 before we jump straight into week 16 is Booger drawing a penis during the broadcast on the field. Surely you're all in on hashtag fade Booger now.
I didn't see this actually. I honestly didn't.
He drew 2 circles around the Colts safeties in split coverage down the back, and then he drew like a line like in the middle where
He was just drawing Nick Foles and Drew Lock, that's all.
Yeah. I tell you what, guys, Romo wouldn't do that. Romo would not do that.
No. I thought that was pretty funny. Of course Booger did that. Of all the of all the analysts, it had to be Booger.
He was in the South. He was probably feeling it, you know?
Mate. Yeah. If you can find the screenshots, it is hilarious. It's not quite Nick Foles' length, but, it's great. Okay, let's move on. Week 16, as I said, 3 Sunday games. Like, this is great. All of them have meaning. Houston -3 at Tampa Bay, totals 49. Houston wrap up the South with a win here, given their win over the Titans last week. So that's the meaning there. And the next game, we'll get to all 3, but Buffalo at New England. New England win the division with a win. Buffalo, if they beat New England and then New England lose to Miami next week, then Buffalo, if they win next week as well, they win the division. And then the Rams at San Fran. San Fran -6.5 at home. If they win that, then obviously it sets up the showdown with Seattle for the number 1 seed potentially in the NFC. So all these games have meaning. There's all something to play for. But yeah, the total 49 in this first game. Houston -3. Tampa Bay now first in passing in the entire league, 328 yards per game. And, Winston leads the league in passing yards. 11 of Tampa's last 12 games have produced 50 points or more. And I think the Texans show that they can get it done on offense, as well. They're 7th in the league in total yards per game. The total has gone way over actually. In 2 of the 3 games the Texans have played against NFC South opponents in New Orleans and the Falcons. I like the over 49 here. Even without Evans and Goodwin, I think Jameis can put up some points against the 26 DVOA passing defense. You can also count maybe on a high probability of a pick 6 or a fumble return touchdown with Jameis Winston. So I'm taking the over 49. What have you got, Nick?
Yeah, I'm just going to repeat that second stat that you just mentioned. Jameis Winston is the NFL passing yards leader. He leads the NFL in yards and thrown touchdowns. And we all know that the Texans' kind of bugbear is their pass defense. They're 26th, 27th in the league. They've been bad all season. Winston loves to throw downfield. He leads the lead in pass attempts as well. He's got 22 more than next best. It was actually Tom Brady, which surprised me when I saw that. So he throws downfield. He throws a lot. This is just a recipe for disaster for the Texans. Even with Mike Evans and potentially Chris Godwin out, Rashad Perriman's balling. This guy's back. I remember him in college, and he was a legit receiver in college. First round draft pick. Never really put it together in Baltimore, and he's finally starting to do something. And he's been really good the last couple of weeks. He's got Cameron Brate in the red zone. And then between Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones, they've got kind of the makings of one competent running back. So I feel like this is a really big danger game for the Texans. And so, yeah, I'm going to take the points with the home underdog, Tampa Bay +3.
Yeah, really tough one, I think, to open up our big week of games. Bucks rounding into form, obviously, 7-7 now in the season. However, none of their 7 wins are against anybody headed for the playoffs. And like you guys touched on, the Tampa offense is thriving off Winston's arm, however irregular it might be and however inaccurate it might be. Yet this Texans defense is a massive concern. I can't see Texans making any noise once in the playoffs. This is not an anti-Texans rant, which we've had a few of them on there. This is a 27th ranked defense. I don't know how that's going to go when they've seen the likes of Baltimore in the playoffs. And but a tough one. I would lean towards the points though with Tampa, just because of that vulnerability right there.
It's hard to back the Texans as a favorite in games, I think, at this point. Yeah. I mean, happy to take them as an underdog, but like we saw it against Denver a couple of weeks ago. They just laid an egg at home. And now they're on the road. You're right about the Texans D. Like, can you name a Texans defensive player? Like,
Merciless.
Yeah, Merciless is the only one that comes to mind, and like it's crazy. I mean, it's just maybe Bernardrick McKinney, but like the secondary is just an absolute mess at this point. So, it's just a bunch of random guys from taken off the street, really. All right, Buffalo at New England. New England -6.5 at home. The total is 37.5. I like Buffalo money line here. I think they win this game. I think they're a chance to win this game. The Bills are the 3rd best in the league against the pass, and Tom Brady only managed 128 yards on Sunday against Cincinnati. Cincinnati, guys. The Pats only had 6 receptions by wide receivers on Sunday for 37 yards. Edelman had 5 targets, caught 2 catches for 9 yards. So do you know who's been the worst quarterback in the entire NFL over the last 6 weeks in QBR and yards per attempt? Tom Brady, 73.5 QBR, 5.59 yards per attempt. That's Blaine Gabbert levels yards per attempt. He stinks. First place is on the line here. I think the Bills, they only lost by 6, played them tough last time. I think Buffalo win. I think they win this game. I'm taking the money line, baby. Let's roll.
I don't mind that, and I think if anything, if I was going to lean one way or another, I'd be leaning Buffalo at the +6.5. But I'm going to go back to the well with the unders in a Bills game. They've served me really well all year, and I know it's a really low total at 37.5. I think it still is.
Yep.
Neither of these sides have any kind of offensive form or skill players that really would worry their defenses. So I'm going back to the well with the unders. I think that correlates really well with a Buffalo spread, and even like you said, a little nibble on the Buffalo money line. But yeah, I'm going to stick with the unders this week.
So quick one in terms of to play devil's advocate. Patriots, reigning Super Bowl champions, are 11-3 this season, and we're admitting that Brady is in a real heap. Does that mean quarterbacks don't matter? That's my only concern there. In terms of we rubbish the running back element of the game. Patriots seem to be functioning really, really well without a quarterback. Is that a fair call?
Yeah, that's fair. Their defense is outstanding, but But so's the Buffaloes. That's what I mean. Like, I feel like this is just going to be a nitty-gritty game when there's only 37 points in the total. Like, I'm going to take the underdog in those tougher scenarios.
I really like the Pats this week, and it's for the same reason I really liked them against Cincinnati last week. The defense remains outrageous, and Buffalo don't really have an offense, ranked 22nd in the competition. Bills have been winning, yep, and I really like them as a franchise, and they're headed for the playoffs for the second time in 3 years. Over the last 2 weeks, 470 total yards in 2 weeks of football. Along with 3 turnovers as well. So I feel that if you are going to beat the Pats or even really cover, you're going to need to be packing quite an offense and even league average, but preferably top 10, which is what Baltimore have obviously had, which is what the Chiefs have had, and which what the Texans have had, which are the 3 teams that have beaten them this year. And I just don't rate Buffalo's offense in that, or the numbers don't back it up either. So I think the Patriots, I'm comfortable taking the Pats and the points here at home.
Okay. I'm also taking the plus 6.5 just as well. I'm just in the money on the money line as well. It's not too many games though where Josh Allen is the better quarterback, but would that be an accurate sentiment just heading into this week?
He's definitely the better athlete.
Yeah, I mean that's the underrated aspect. He could run for 100 in this game. Like if they're throwing it down, he's going to
take out the rest of the narrative. If you had to pick a quarterback, who do you pick right now? Do you pick Josh Allen or do you pick Brady?
I don't know. I feel like
I think I'd probably still take Brady.
Yeah, I mean, but if you change the surname on the back of Brady's jersey to like a random just put something Smith on the back, and the way he's played over the last 6 weeks, you would bench him.
Probably. I agree.
What about if we got league average offensive line? If we're going to play hypotheticals, league average offensive line in front of this Brady character, and some league average wide receivers on a running game as well. I'd definitely be taking Brady then.
I don't know, man.
There are mitigating factors.
They always seem to blame everything else around him. They've got Dante Scarnecchia, who's the greatest offensive line coach of all time. They've got Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels. They still can't make it work because their quarterback cannot throw the ball accurately beyond the line of scrimmage. Like most of his scores are minus 1 or 2 air yards behind the line of scrimmage, and it's just yak. That's all. It's their offense at the moment. It's gadget plays.
Yeah, well, it's all Adam, and that's absolutely true. But this is a team that's still there 11-3 on the season,
but what's a good win for them? Who's a good win on their schedule?
This is very true. Just they beat loser teams all at the start of the year. It was the most easiest schedule I think we've ever seen. They beat
Dallas in wind and wet and rain,
just barely as well.
Yeah,
Remember,
exactly.
That was a 4-point win.
Dallas. Yeah, I'm looking forward to someone getting that sound clip of me saying Brady stinks in January when they win the Super Bowl. But but right now he does. He stinks. But anyway, you just trust that they'll get it together, and maybe it is this week and lock in the division. So. All right, let's move on to the last game here on the Sunday slate. I love saying that. LA Rams at San Francisco. San Fran minus 6.5. The total is 45. Nick, why don't you start us off? What have you got for us?
I was so disappointed with the Rams last week. I mean, as an Eagles fan that really needed Dallas to have a loss, another loss, they kind of smacked the Rams, and they'd done nothing for 3 or 4 weeks offensively. They didn't know how to move the ball. They didn't know how to score points, and then they all just seemed to put it all together against the Rams, which was just really disappointing. So I think I'm kind of off the Rams for the rest of the year. It's just been a really disappointing year. They've had a couple of good weeks, and they kind of looked like they were getting back to the dominant defense and Aaron Donald, the defensive player of the year, contender, and looking a little bit more like the Rams that we got used to last season, but. They've been so inconsistent, and they just haven't shown that talent that we know that they've got enough. And I think I'm off them for the rest of the season.
Yep.
I think also, the Niners are really going to be smarting after blowing that loss against Atlanta last week. They really should have won that game and probably should have won it fairly easily. But the Falcons, and we haven't said this very often this year, they were just more composed in those final couple of minutes. I think the Niners get back on track here. I think that was their aberration. And I think they get back on track in style this week. I've got them winning by a couple of touchdowns.
Okay. Do you agree with Nick, James?
Yeah, this one's a really tough one for me. Rams, exactly as Nick said, sort of came back into form with that really good win over Seattle. Then, Dallas hung 44 on them. San Francisco, same example. They went into the Superdome and probably the win of the season, yet allowed the Falcons. 49ers would have been the last team of the year. You think the Falcons are going to go 80 yards on and score a touchdown and win the game, but it happened. So I think the best form guide is probably the last time these guys met when the Rams hosted San Fran in week 6. Rams scored 10 points and produced 157 total yards and got smashed, obviously. Maybe that is the form guide I'd rely upon, and which might lean me San Francisco -6.5. But also, guys, if Seattle win against Arizona and San Francisco lose this game, that's it. NFC West is done and dusted. It would be Seattle's without that Week 17 game mattering one bit.
So it's massive. And I kind of called, I wasn't bold enough to pick Atlanta. I think you did last week, James, but I said it was a terrible spot for the 49ers. They had those games against the Ravens and Saints, and then the look ahead to this game and Seattle. So that kind of was the game to lose. And, sometimes you kind of need those losses. It sounds ridiculous, but it's fine. It doesn't change if they win this and win Seattle, the loss to Atlanta means absolutely nothing.
I think San Francisco, to be honest, I know I've been late to the train with them. And I think they're building something absolutely enormous, yet it's happened so quickly. That's the only reservation for me. And that might whether they are a young group that is looking that sort of one game ahead already, these guys are going to be around for the next decade with that kind of pass defense. Garoppolo gets stronger and that mastermind in Shanahan. Hold on to Stellar as well, But whether it's this year, that's my only thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
The only teams that last a decade cheat. That's allegedly. No, but I don't know. This game for me is a pass. There's too many unknowns here. The Rams are so Jekyll and Hyde this season. Just the last 5 weeks alone have just been so Jekyll and Hyde. And the 49ers injury report's pretty ugly. Richard Sherman's expected to play, but he's questionable with a hamstring. Jaquiski Tart, the safety's out. K'Wan Williams, D Ford, Julian Taylor, and then DJ Jones was placed on injured reserve last week. Just way too many. The bet for me this week is George Kittle overs. I think he had 17 targets last week. And we saw the tight ends kind of have a little bit of a field day against the Rams last week, with Blake Jarwin and Jason Witten getting plenty of love up the middle. So I think Kittle hits 100 plus yards there at 260. Maybe my long shot play, but I might have something else for you as well. But that's probably the way I'll go. I'll leave it at that line. I think San Fran win, but it's just too hard with the Rams. They're just so Jekyll and Hyde.
I'm surprised at that price for Kittle, to be honest. I reckon that should be closer to 210, 220.
Yeah, well, that's looking offshore because a lot of the Australian books are not up yet with player stuff. So we just have to go with our best guess. Recording on a Thursday here, it's always tough, but. Yeah, give or take, but I think anything over kind of 220 for that, I'd probably take. So,
I like it.
Yeah, me too. That's why it's my long shot. Although I do like something else with Kittle, but we'll get to it. Jacksonville at Atlanta. Atlanta -7 at home. The total is 45.5. Despite the feel-good victory for Jags last week, its offense again had a pedestrian game. It amassed just 262 yards of total offense. Just 42 rushing yards from Leonard Fournette. That's the 5th time in the last 6 games he's failed to top 50 rushing yards. Thanks, Lenny. You were on my fantasy team. And that's against the Raiders defense, who have been awful. And then the Jags as well. Coughlin gone. Looks like potentially more of a clean out coming. They've been put on kind of notice there. So that's one to watch. Falcons 2, I guess. We should see some movement. I think the off-season's going to be far more interesting for these two teams than this actual game. It's a big meh for me in a pass. If anything, I'd lean Atlanta if it gets under the touchdown, but that's it for me.
Is this line of the Atlanta -7 a bit of an overreaction to last week's results? I think they've
been pretty good over the last month. I mean, they beat New Orleans and they they've had some games.
Yeah, so both of these teams have been trending in opposite directions over the last kind of 4 to 6 weeks, and so Atlanta definitely deserve favoritism. I have no argument or no qualm with that at all. But I'm wondering if this line, they beat San Fran at massive unders. I think maybe that line could be a bit of an overreaction, but it's too big for me based on the entire season. It's probably pass for me. If it does come in, I might have a play.
Pass for me too. But I do agree, absolutely fascinating in terms of what's going to happen in the off-season with both of these teams. And I was just thinking, who would get the awful job of telling Tom Coughlin that he's been fired or to asked to leave the building? Because I tell you, I would not volunteer for that in a million years.
I think the owner did it because he was the only one that would had enough money or the cojones to do it.
It's probably the only one left in the building. So.
Yeah, exactly.
True. Coughlin would be there to about 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Coach and GM also gone in Jacksonville for sure.
Yeah.
Have to be gone. And then Atlanta, I could see Atlanta's keeping everything in situ as well, to be honest. That's
they've played hard, and maybe they're trying to fight for Dan Quinn's job, and maybe that's the reason that line's probably over the touchdown.
And this is a franchise who's obsessed with incremental gains, which they got from Sky Racing, the cycling team. Dimitrov's obsessed with this as well. And I think he's not going to be the kind of guy who's going to say, let's my mistake in terms of the hiring. And I think that win at San Francisco last week was the exact kind of, and then have New Orleans as well.
Yep.
Might just convince Arthur Blank that, we're going to keep it all together.
New Orleans -3 at Tennessee. The total is 50.5. Nick, what's your thoughts on this?
I really like Tennessee. It's a super interesting matchup. Tennessee are top 10 in both pass and rush offense. They're 9 and 8 in those categories. The Saints are top 10 in both pass and run defense. They're 10 and 9 in those categories. So in that regard, it's going to be a really interesting matchup. Where the difference is that the Saints also have a top 5 offense, and Drew Brees is in GOAT form. We saw last week completion percentage of something ridiculous like 97% from 30-odd pass attempts. I think that he and Thomas and a few of those guys, Kamara, will just overwhelm the Titans in terms of volume and accuracy. The Titans are ranked 22nd in pass defense, just for what it's worth. So I'm on the Saints here, but I really like what Tennessee have been doing. And it does hurt me a little bit to take the Saints here, but New Orleans -3.
James, are you in agreement?
Yeah, I am actually. I think, to be honest, Titans were a nice story there for a short period of time. There was a little bit of a seductive price in the market, which you can get yourself out of now if you want. Whereas the Saints, they're the real deal, and they're in the box seat for home field advantage in the NFC. Very few weaknesses throughout the team. Also been great on the road this season. 5 wins in a row on the road. And during those 5 wins, and I can't believe this, 1 single turnover in 5 road games in those 5 consecutive wins. Yes, both teams still have a heap to play with, and I mean a heap because home field advantage will matter obviously for the playoffs. But I'm happy to take the Saints here. They're a better team all round, and they're the one with the runs on the board as well. So Saints for me.
I'd actually, I'm against you guys, both you guys. I'd actually double down on the Titans price. I actually think they were the better team last week against the Texans.
I've passed the Titans baton on.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm still in. They were actually the better team last week. They had more first downs, more yards per play. They pretty much, just an unlucky red zone turnover was ultimately a 14-point swing in that game. Otherwise, Tennessee win that game, win comfortably. The narrative is way different. The look-ahead line was like 1.5, and that's just blown out. Whereas the Saints, they were perfect at home. It was a great spot for them at home. The record night for Brees there at home against a very banged up and overrated Colts team. Jacoby Brissett is injured. Also a Pro Bowl alternative, which is hilarious.
That is funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But they're now taking a rare trip outdoors, where they're 4-12-1 against the spread in December and January since Drew Brees' second season in New Orleans. So, he's out of a dome where he thrives and he can be the ballerina and move around and be beautiful. But out in the elements, out in Tennessee, I give the Titans a chance to win this game outright, especially if Houston lose to the Bucs, which is entirely possible, as we've seen the Bucs and we've seen Houston choke away. But DVOA kind of agrees with me. The Titans actually moved up to 10th in DVOA despite losing. So they moved them up, and they had them as the better team in that game as well. So I just think Tennessee +3 here is the play, and I'll have a double at the Tennessee money line as well. I just think Tennessee is still value. I think they have a lot to play for.
I agree. If you're looking for value and you're looking to kind of play contrarian, then Tennessee is the one, I think, for the week.
Yep.
Like I said, I really like what they're doing.
Yep.
and have liked them all year. You know, I've ridden Derrick Henry in fantasy all season.
Yep.
Played him in DFS nearly every week. Dude is a stud, and they're quietly a very good roster.
Exactly. The only weakness, and this is where the massive advantage is in New Orleans' favor, is Tennessee's corners are terrible, and you mentioned 22nd in pass defense, so it could be a lot worse actually than where they actually are ranked. Just given over the last since those players went down, they've probably been even worse. And Michael Thomas is probably the best wide receiver in football at the moment, and he's on an absolute rip and tear. I
think the difference is Tennessee are very good. New Orleans are elite.
Yep.
That's the way I see it. And like I said, it hurts me because I really like what Tennessee are doing, and they deserve to play in playoffs. They deserve postseason, but I don't think this is a week for them.
Yep. And they need to get a win. They need to win one of the last 2 games and hope that the Ravens don't rest their starters against the Steelers. So we'll have to wait and see what goes on there. But as a home dog, I'll take them in that spot. Cincinnati at Miami, another just a cracking game here. Like Miami -1 at home. The Joe Burrow Bowl, even though not really. But its total is 46.5. Miami a favorite in a game. Finally, they're favorites in a game. The Bengals have actually outgained their opponents in 3 straight games as their rush offenses shine, racking up 343 rushing yards against the Browns and Pats. The Bengals defense has actually played really well in recent weeks and ranks 3rd in red zone percentage. And we saw the Dolphins against the Jets just could not finish drives. They settled for 6 field goals. So I do think this is a good spot for the Bengals. They also don't have to worry about damaging their draft status because they've got a 2-game buffer for that number 1 pick. So they can win this game and then just rest starters next week or do whatever they want next week. So I'm going to play the Bengals, even though they fell apart in the second half last week. I don't think it's going to happen against a Dolphins defense that's historically bad against the pass. You're going against this is the dramatic difference. You're going against last week the number 1 defense in the NFL. And now you're going to the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL. So it's a massive difference in opponent. It's kind of like versing someone in Mario Kart that's an elite person or someone that's never played it before, and you're going to win that race. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with Cincinnati here. Also taking the points between. I'll touch on this with the Giants game, but taking the points when 2 teams face each other below 500 in Week 16 has been very profitable. So I'm going to take Cincinnati +1.
There you go. Interesting. Yep. I don't think that there's a whole lot different between these 2 franchises in how bad they've been all year. I think there's one major difference, and that is Devontae Parker. He's the man in Miami. He's the difference maker in this game. I reckon, and he said that he doesn't care about the Pro Bowl. He said that it doesn't matter. He just wants to win games. He's got his new contract or his extension. But I reckon just quietly and in private, he'd be pretty pissed with not getting a nod for Pro Bowl, given the season he's had on one of the worst teams in NFL history, really. To week 16, 950 yards and 8 touchdowns. Got a couple of games to go still. That's a bloody good stat line, given the situation that he's in Miami this year. I think Miami win this at home. They're playing hard. They've got nothing to gain by playing, and ironically, it would be better for them to lose. And so I kind of respect what they're doing in that they're still playing. They're still out there trying to win every week, even though they're not very good. Cincinnati, I don't see that as much. I think Miami win this. I think Parker is the difference, and Miami win by a touchdown.
Pass from me, really like both sides that you guys presented there. But also, interestingly, this isn't the worst game of the week, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
Cincy and Miami is not the worst game of the week.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Let's move on to the worst game of the week. Carolina at Indianapolis. That is the worst game of the week. Also, just to double back, do you know who leads Miami in rushing yards this season? Do any of you guys know?
It's not Kenyon Drake.
You're certainly not. Any guesses, Nick?
Ryan Fitzpatrick?
He does. He leads Miami in rushing yards this season with
amazing.
With 219 rushing yards.
That is amazing.
And I tell you, if running backs mattered, they might not be.
There you go. I just find that interesting. Yeah, and I agree with you. Devontae Parker should have got a Pro Bowl nod, and he was left out of the short list for the NFL All 100 Years team as well. So bad week for Devontae Parker. He should have been in that. He's the GOAT. All right, Carolina at Indy, worst game of the week. Indy -7 at home. Total is 46. Will Greer, anyone? Anyone a big fan of Will Greer here? Anyone?
We've got a colleague in the office, Michael Doyle, so it's a shout out to him because he's a West Virginia alum, which is where Will Greer was at. And
So shout out to Michael.
Yep. I backed him to win a Heisman at like $67 and he made the final three. So that was a good little futures book from a couple of years ago.
Just while we're on the shout out, Michael's the man that makes the website tick.
Okay.
Behind the scenes, the website developer. So yeah.
And that website is statsinsider.com.au. So check it out.
You're right.
Does anyone remember Kyle Allen? Just rest in peace.
That we're going to give the keys to the franchise to this guy.
I think Marlon Mack and Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, that's hilarious. Marlon Mack and Christian McCaffrey might run the ball 30 times each in this one. It's a big fat pass from me. I already touched on my good joke earlier that Jacoby Brissett's a Pro Bowl alternative. Oh god. All right, pass from me. Anyone got a play on this?
I've got no play on this one, but I can imagine little child Josh, at the foot of the Christmas tree. Santa, what I really want for Christmas is Jameis Winston.
No, not Jameis Winston.
I could just can you imagine?
I want Matthew Stafford in Indy.
That type of inconsistency, but that type of balls behind that Colts offensive line. Oh, that would be so entertaining. But no, this is a terrible game, and it's still not the worst game of the week, despite what you think and say.
I actually really do like this game for multiple reasons. From a futures perspective, Colts, seriously, I need one more game to get that sweet, sweet middle between the over 6.5 and the under 9.5. Which is it's been waiting. They've done they've done an Oakland here. They've lost 4 in a row, and they're threatening to go under that line. But I was actually quite surprised here. I honestly thought the line would be about 3 or 4 points instead of 7. So there's quite a discrepancy there. Yes, Indy lost 4 in a row, and they've also lost 6 of their last 8 against the spread. Panthers, they're struggling too. So they've lost 7 of their last 8 straight up, but 5 of those 8 have been against teams headed for the playoffs, and half have been within 8. McCaffrey alone is going to keep this door open all match. Panthers wouldn't surprise me. Moneyline Panthers, which would be a really good price, but definitely +7 against this Colts team who they're appalling at the probably. So Panthers +7.
Yeah, I have this 4.5, but I don't know with Will Greer. I just didn't know how to rate him with my numbers, so I probably backed away. But yeah, I had this at 4.5, so the 7 is like a massive value. I'll probably end up playing it just because I want to trust my numbers, but. Yeah,
Colts, please win, please.
Please lose, because if we keep losing, we could potentially get Tua. So let's keep falling down. If we lose out and some other results go our way, we can end up in the top 10. So
and you could trade up and get him if you wanted.
Yeah, we do have Washington's second round pick, which is like pick 34, which is awesome.
Josh, just what the Colts leaders need is an injury ravaged quarterback.
One that may consider retirement early as well. Right. Yeah, great. Last against the Saints is when I really truly missed Andrew Luck. I kind of just really wept for I'm not a religious man, but I would have prayed for Andrew Luck to come back.
Also thinking, does Indianapolis can you get further away from Hawaii? Weather-wise than Indianapolis.
Yeah, I know. Crazy. All right, Baltimore -10 at Cleveland. The total is 48. I mean, at this point in the season, the Ravens rank below only 4 teams in DVOA history, one of which has only played 12 games because of some sort of strike historically. But yeah, at this point, it would be absolutely absurd to pick against the Ravens. Although their last loss was at home to this very side, they now play them on the road. 10-point favorites. It reeks of a trap game. So you either take the points or take a hike. Pass for me.
Yeah, it might be a trap game. I don't know. I feel like it's either the easiest play of the week or it's that trap game that you say. Either way, I'm kind of well on the Ravens train, and I can't see that stopping at any station for a couple of weeks yet. So I'm taking Baltimore at the points.
They just need to win. They don't care about covering. If they win by 1, that's it. That's the 1 seed.
I don't think they know any other way. Yep. I don't think they know any other way. It's just pedal to the metal and just gun it. And I think that's what they'll do again.
Yeah, Ravens for me, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we haven't even touched on the Browns. Like, the players demanding to be traded to Arizona in the middle of the game. Like, that's OBJ and Jarvis Landry are like, call me, come get me to the Arizona Cardinals. Like, their owner got done for drink driving 6 months ago, and that's more desirable than the Browns right now.
And it's that sort of like the dirtiest word in sports. Like, people don't want to hear it all the time. Is culture, right? And this is not a place to talk about the benefits of. This is clearly a disgusting culture in Cleveland Browns. So this is evidence A when culture goes bad and gets you nowhere. And this is the Browns. So that's for those who don't think culture matter.
while we're on the Ravens, I thought I might also just very quickly look back about 16 weeks ago. We did our kind of season preview and put up a couple of, I guess, season-long bets or plays or wishes, whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
And Josh, I think you had one of yours was Lamar Jackson to earn at least one MVP vote.
Yep, and I had him as my MVP dark horse as well.
I think you might be safe with that one.
I think he might get all 50 at this point.
But one of mine was for Lamar Jackson to break the single season quarterback rushing record, which he did last week.
Yep.
Mike Vick in 2006. So yeah, very impressive season.
Yeah.
And my one is, I've always said Randy Newman's Baltimore is a stunning song. like actually he's one of his very best, which is saying something.
Yep.
I still like You've Got a Friend in Me.
I also want to mention, going back to our preseason podcast, I'm looking at our picks here. AFC North, only one of us picked the Ravens to win the division.
Yeah, we're going to move on from that.
That was me, and then Nick and James picked the Browns to win the division.
Culture. Culture.
Yep. That's where we're at there. But looking at some of our best bets as well, like the season wins, Bengals under 6 and Ravens over 8.5 were two of our good ones. And then, it was pretty good. Wasn't bad.
I did pivot really quickly with that division bet and just got paid for that this week, actually, in terms of that really good numbers hung around for a little bit with Baltimore. I think people were not so much late with them, but still believing that the likes of Steelers and
the Browns
still had something to say on the season. Where for me, it was more about how bad those two teams were, less at that stage believing in the Ravens. I certainly believe in them now, but yeah.
I took a lot of Ravens futures because I just knew the public hammered the Browns, so there was just inherent value on Baltimore. And my one regret is I didn't take AFC Championship or Super Bowl. I just purely went with wins and divisions and all that sort of stuff. And that now, back in week 1, I think they were like 50s to win the Super Bowl, and it's seems just crazy now when you look at them at $3. It's just,
Don't sweat the wins, though. You get a couple of wins. It's easy to think about what if, and I wish I'd done that, but
oh well.
Don't sweat the wins.
All right, New York Giants at Washington. I think this might be your guys' worst game of the week here. -2.5 here is the line for Washington at home favorites. Total is 42.5, and this is the thing I touched on earlier about the Bengals on taking them +1. So research shows that when two teams that will have losing records on the season play in Week 16, you want to take the points. Taking the points in a Week 16 matchup between two teams that will finish but with a losing record has covered 67.5% of the time since 2000. So the Giants, anyone want to join me on the Giants?
No chance.
Okay.
No chance.
No chance. Okay.
It hurts my eyes to even think about watching this game. This is a complete pass for me.
That's why you bet on it.
Well, there's one NFC East clash that's going to have people watching and tuning in. This one's not it. It's just disgusting.
Yep. Anything from you on this, James?
I just wrote por favor.
Okay.
It's a big pass for me.
Let's talk about this next week, Nick. I reckon Giants, Washington might surprisingly be more entertaining than Dallas, Philly, but we'll see. Just because the NFL is so whack. It just really is. Can you just, I can imagine, can you imagine like the Dallas Philly game finishing like 17-9 or something, and this is going to be like a 44-40 Giants win or something. It's like crazy.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Pittsburgh -3 at the Jets. The total is 37.5. Here we have two offenses that rank in the bottom 3 of DVOA and one defense that ranks in the top 3. That means we shouldn't see much scoring at all. The Jets are number 1 in rush yards, in yards per rush allowed on the defense this season, so it's up to Duck Hodges, quack, to move the ball through the air on the road. Something I don't see him having much success, with regularity. I mean, he's had moments, but I just don't see if he can do it consistently. And then on the other side, the Steelers defense hasn't given up 300 yards in any of their last 5 games or more than 17 points in any of their last 4. So this is tailor-made for an underbet. Under 37.5. James, what do you got?
Yeah, I really like the Jets here, actually. And that's the first time I've said that this year. They've won 4 of their last 5 at home. Have cleared 20 points in 5 of their past 6 games as well. But mostly this is about the Jets D, which won't be troubled by a Pitt team who's struggling mightily. Just 229 yards last week. I know it was against Buffalo, but 5 turnovers as well. I think the Jets can take the run game away from Pittsburgh as well. Jets are second best in the league when it comes to rush defense, according to DVOA, which is going to put going to put the ball into the Ducks' hands for Pittsburgh. Quack, quack, exactly. So yeah, I haven't said it all year because I despise the Jets, but I'll take the points here, +3.
Yeah, I kind of agree with James. I don't mind the Jets at home. I think it like both of you said, it should be a low-scoring game. Both very good defensive units. The concern for the Jets lies obviously with their pass defense, as you both already said. But I think that does open a bit of a backdoor for James Washington, who's kind of the number one receiver now in Pittsburgh. He averages 17.8 yards per catch on the season, which in the last month is up to 20.3 yards per catch with Duck Hodges. So there's a bit of a connection there, and I think that's worth keeping an eye on in prop markets when they come out here in Australia. And for DFS, I think there could be a value play on James Washington there. But I do think the Jets +3 is decent, and again, a little play on the unders as well.
All right, a couple of Jets plays. I like it. It's a massive game for the Steelers. They need to win and hope that the Ravens rest their starters next week for a chance to kind of lock up that 6th playoff spot in the playoffs, with Tennessee kind of looming as well. So I know who I'd rather see in the playoffs, and that's Ryan Tannehill traded to the Steelers. And that would be the way to go. But that's not going to happen, unfortunately. All right, let's move on to Detroit at Denver. Denver are 6.5 point favorites at home. The total is 38.5. The Lions are keeping Matthew Edward and Patricia. We expect to be a playoff contender, Mrs. Ford said. That means playing meaningful games in December.
That's the same person who hired someone who has a laminated piece of paper with a pencil in their ear.
Hashtag free Matthew Stafford. Hashtag Stafford to Indy 2020. That's all I'll say. Pass from me on this game.
Wasn't Matt Patricia meant to be bringing the Patriots defense to Detroit? Wasn't that the whole reason that they hired him? This game is a pass for me, but there are some massive, massive concerns around the Lions, and I'm not sure what Denver have to play for either, outside of just not getting hurt. And maybe Big Bleep Lock wants to sew up a starting berth for next season, but yeah, I just don't know where to go with this game. So it's a pass from me.
I hate this Detroit team as well, guys. And exactly what you were saying in terms of the Matt Patricia thing. This is a really sort of outlier defense as well. The way he structures his defense is, especially in the modern NFL, is criminal. Like, honestly, and even if we go back to the Super Bowl when he was at the Patriots and Philly put up, nearly 50 points against them when they hired him from there, this is a really bad Detroit team in every respect. They lack imagination across the franchise. The drafting record is deplorable. They're really unathletic as well, all over the defense. This is a terrible team. And it's saying something where we're matched up against the Broncos, if the Broncos are looking like the smart guys, which they do here, that's a big concern. So the Lions have lost 10 of the last 11 and failed to cover in 8 of the last 9 as well. Broncos are in season best form. And if we take out that blowout by a really good KC team last week, Broncos are in excellent form, and the defense is top 10 as well in the league. And Detroit certainly don't have any kind of offense which is going to exploit that. And here's another stat. Guys, you said that before about Miami's rush up. Who do we think Detroit's leading receiver is on the season?
Because, Golladay and Marvin Jones are both on IR, am I correct?
Yeah, it's Amendola. And you don't want Amendola, a little 35-year-old sort of slot receiver in and out kind of guy, leading a modern...
Hasn't he missed about 5 games as well?
Yeah, he has. He missed the start of the year. You're right, Nick.
Is Danny Amendola 35? Wow, he's 34. Jeez, but still.
34, there
he's
you go.
Old.
Yeah. Well, this is his 3rd or 4th team as well.
Yeah, true.
It's Broncos for me, and seriously, Detroit, Ford family, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, this is from all of us. If this is a lock of the week, it's a message from the Punt Return Podcast to Detroit saying, seriously, this is terrible. He's so far behind in that division as well.
Yep. You mentioned Matt Patricia being criminal. I'm all for him being locked up. So that's all I'll say.
He does look like he could do. He belongs behind bars.
Did you see him on the sideline for?
There either, because there are some dodgy stuff. So
did you see him on the sideline during the Steelers game? Like
what was happening there?
Well, he was there, but they were saying it was Ben Roethlisberger, but we all knew it was Matt Patricia. He was learning how to coach a good defense while he was there. So it's pretty funny that Ben Roethlisberger is slowly morphing into Matt Patricia, but we'll wait and see how that works out next season. Oakland at the Chargers. The Chargers.
It took me a while to get that joke. But...
Sorry, mate. Terrible delivery. This is why I'll never quit my day job. Oakland at the Chargers. Chargers -7. Totals 45.5. I have zero thoughts on this game in these two franchises. I'll sit down and enjoy Phillip Rivers next week in what probably may be his last game for the Chargers in the NFL. God bless that man. What a football player. What a personality. What a procreator.
What a dad.
Yeah. Great dad. Great swimmer. Swimmers. Derek Carr. I mean, couldn't think of anything more opposite to Phillip Rivers. He sucks. I think Gruden and the Raiders could be decent if they get a good quarterback. I've never seen a QB throw the ball out of bounds on 4th down as many times as Derek Carr. I mean, it's just laughable, really. So I have zero thoughts on this game whatsoever. I'm passing. I probably will not watch it. Only if Red Zone kind of cut to it for some sort of Chargers charging a lead or coming back from a massive deficit, which is generally what happens.
I want, like you, I want nothing to do with these two teams. I can completely understand why punters hate both of these franchises. They are consistently inconsistent, and I can't do it with them, either of them. Yep. They're just garbage. Pass from me too.
Just 2 more games and Oakland will end up losing 10 for the year and thus getting under the 6.5 win mark for the season. So that's what that's all about. And I tell you what, Gruden, I'd apologise for everything bad I said because you would have come through for the second year. And my plan was, as soon as they gave him the 10-year deal, my plan was that every single year, if he was to survive all 10, I'd go the season under. And so this could be 2 for 2. Mind you, I was leaning slightly towards Oakland, but I think it's just been said that Josh Jacobs is out. So I don't think Oakland can they certainly can't win, and I doubt whether they can cover without Josh Jacobs.
It was a perfect end to the Raiders. Like their home game to lose to the Jags in that way, like that, in that fashion, it was just a perfect ending.
Fans loved it too.
Yeah, it was, but also, they did. that went on apparently. Let's also not get too excited about the Chargers because I've been seriously. They lost by 29 points and 7 turnovers. Minnesota are good, but Chargers, seriously, if they were to lose this, there's going to be some big issues there as well.
Okay.
Franchise with so many troubles as it is. So
I went on isgrudengone.com. Do you know how much money he's accrued so far in his tenure with the Raiders?
I don't even want to know.
Oh, already it would be, 20 million, right?
Very close, James. Well done. 19.5 million. Since I went on to the website, he's made $11. So let's work from here on out. I'll come back to it and see how much he's made while we podcast.
Because I think there's a lot of coaches and Coaches Association as well were really repulsed by that contract.
Yeah. He's still owed 80 million. Still owed 80 million. So, this is a great website, just quietly. I mean, what a great, whoever set that up, genius. Give him the Nobel Peace Prize.
And this is also thrown out, and I shouldn't do this, but what's happened to Gruden's face?
Oh,
something's has happened as well. Like whether it's surgery or it's now perpetually locked in that kind of weird.
I would be keeping Kris Jenner away from him because he's slowly morphing into Bruce Jenner.
Yeah,
pre-surgery.
Yeah, I can't stand the guy. I just cannot stand him.
I tell you what, man. Arizona at Seattle. Seattle -10. Total is 51. I'm actually super keen to see this one. The Seahawks have actually been a pretty bad bet at home this season. I mean, while they beat Arizona 27-10 on the road, they haven't won a home game by more than a touchdown this season. So they have a massive game with the 49ers on deck next week. Arizona are 5-1 against the spread on the road this season. The Cardinals can play loose after snapping their 6-game skid, and Kenyon Drake kind of takes the burden off Kyler Murray. Also, Kyler Murray last week, he was finally off the injury report, finally healthy, played great, moved the ball, ran the ball well, looked so much better. So I think he had to put a lot into his injury, kind of limiting his ability. And I think with him healthy, totally different. I think because he's so reliant on his legs and movement in the pocket behind that terrible offensive line. If he can't be mobile, it changes everything. That's why Josh Rosen was broken into 1,000 pieces last season. So I think even if the Seahawks get up big, we saw on Sunday just how open they leave the back door, and they just always want to establish the run. So I mean that sets up perfectly here for the Arizona Cardinals to cover +10 in a division game. Yeah, I'm going to take the Cards here.
Seattle genuinely don't know what a double-digit result looks like, while Arizona this year have been ATS darlings, and they're 8-5 against the spread. So, and the SI model as well, shout out to it. It agrees it's got a beaming green smile on the Cardinals plus 10.
Yeah.
Now, Seattle, 15 of its last 18 matches have been decided by single figures. That goes back into last season as well. And even before that, this is it. They're addicted to sort of tight, close matches. Still think they're excellent. Still think they could be a legit Super Bowl contender. But I am happy to take the points with the Cards here. So plus 10 Arizona.
Maybe Seattle aren't as good as some of us thought they were. And maybe the Cards are slightly better than other of us thought they were. And so I can see how this type of narrative could lead both of my esteemed co-hosts on this podcast to take the underdog here. But pass from me.
This Seattle game, by the way, the last time they played is the only double-digit win they've had this season was against the Cardinals, 27-10. So I feel like even though the Cardinals have snapped the 6 game, I feel like they're a much better team than when they played them back in week 4. So I do think, they have Patrick Peterson back on the field and things like that. So things are a little bit different. That's the only double-digit win Seattle have had this season.
Kenyon Drake, you mentioned Kenyon Drake. I think that he's actually been a really good signing for Arizona. I think we were when it happened, we all raised our eyebrows and said, what are they doing? They've got David Johnston. How is this going to work together? But, it's been really good, and it was sensational last week.
It's worked to the point that they give David Johnson a carry a game now.
Yep.
So I don't know. I don't know what his contract status is as well, but he seems to have.
He could be on the roster bubble.
Persona non grata in Arizona.
There you go. Kenyon Drake's the best Kenyan since Eliud Kipchoge did the 2-hour marathon. So, yeah.
and Kenyon Martin before that.
Yeah, he's also the best Drake since Drake, really, as well. So,
Seinfeld's Drake.
Yeah, exactly. All right, now probably for the game of the week, Dallas -2.5 at Philly. Total is 46.5. James, what have you got?
I'm going to take the Cowboys. I've liked them since the start of the year, and this should have been done weeks ago. This division should have been all sewed up. We shouldn't have even been here. Philly, and this is me being completely sort of trying to be rational, and I know Nick's emotional connection, but the reality is Philly losing to Miami. They had to scrap and claw against the Giants and Washington. They fill me with no confidence whatsoever. They're down to the 7th, 8th string. They're getting hot dog vendors to fill in at wide receiver at the moment. Cowboys, they've been really frustrating. But all of their losses have been to actually really exceptional teams. And I know that's being strange, except for the Jets and the Bears. Yes, they lost to the Jets and the Bears. In both those games, they were statistically off the charts and were ruined by the man named Jason Garrett. So exactly, there's that clapping. So really, this is one of those games that all rational thinking says Dallas should win this, but the Cowboys have this amazing tendency to melt in the spotlight. And as we saw from the Eagles, they can step up in weird times, such as winning a Super Bowl. And so it's the Cowboys, but God, this should have been done. Should have been done weeks ago.
Yeah, you're not wrong. This should have been over. This division race should have been over a month ago, but it isn't. And now there are question marks over Dak Prescott. I don't know how the Cowboys beat the Eagles defense with, who is he? Cooper Rush. We're pretty good against the rush. The Eagles are pretty good against the rush. So
terrible.
I like it as much as is Cooper Rush a made-up character to be a Dallas quarterback? Cooper Rush.
Yeah,
he sounds like they made him in that stadium.
In one of those rooms. Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I was going to say, he sounds like a cowboy. Like, I'll get you, Cooper Rush.
Meanwhile, Josh has joked all year about whether Carson Wentz is any good. And I'm not
Cooper
saying
Rush might be better than Carson Wentz. Who knows?
Look, he hasn't been perfect. I'm not going to say he's been perfect, but he has kind of rediscovered that gene that made him clutch. In his MVP type season before he got injured, he was clutch, and he's a really good quarterback. In the last couple of weeks, he's led game tying and game winning drives in both games.
Who they played though, Nick?
Forget it. Yeah. Forget about it. They're still alive.
They're alive. That's true.
They're still alive.
The clutch gene isn't real, right? That's not a real thing.
But Nick is allowed. Nick's allowed. Remember, this is Philly. Nick, you are allowed to be completely irrational.
Just think about the greatest underdog story in Philadelphia history, and we've got to get that Rocky music cracking.
But that's a work of fiction.
You know Rocky's not real either, right?
What do you mean? What do you mean? I saw him running up and down those steps.
Yeah. I mean, there's a statue. I mean, the biggest underdog story in Philadelphia history is Big Dick Nick. That's real. Every bit of it.
That was magic.
Every bit of him is real.
Magic. That's supernatural. That was magic. Look, this game is a must-win for the Eagles. Dallas win.
They're all must-win.
These are over for Philly if Dallas win. Whereas even if Philly win, Dallas can still win. What price for Eagles to win this game and then lose to the Giants next week? That would be the greatest thing I've ever seen. It would be the biggest.
Do you think that would go down? With
mate, the city would riot. It would be insane. I'm in for that. That's what I want.
Speaking of Philly sports, I mean, just a quick side note, and Nick would notice today. So Philly blew a double-digit lead against Miami today and ended up going down by about 10 or something themselves. 14-0 at home heading into the game. The fans were booing them like crazy for dropping their first game of the year at home. This is Philly sports, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. And
hashtag special.
And that's why I'm leaning Eagles +3 if it gets there.
Yes.
But I like the under 46.5 more importantly. So while I think Dallas is the much better team this season, especially on quarterback play, even though like my knocks on Wentz all aside though, Dak has been a lot better than Wentz all season long, a lot more consistent. But on paper, there isn't too much separating these two teams. I think Philly, while they're not playing their absolute best football, they still have a great roster and a massive coaching advantage. And despite what's gone all wrong this season, they still miraculously have a chance to win this division. And you look at their roster, you look at the home field advantage, and you think they can win this game. They can definitely win this game. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Dallas, going to have to lean on the run a lot, especially with Dak Prescott's hyper hairline fracture on the index finger. It's the first time he's been on the injury report, so that's something to monitor. His routine's been ruined for the week. And Philly boasts quite a stout run defense. Key injuries at linebacker as well for Dallas. I think Zach Ertz and Goddard could feast up the middle, creating havoc. We saw Tyler Higbee go for like a massive amount of yards last week. Tyler Higbee, like, come on.
Career game.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Eagles have a chance to win this game outright. I'll take the +3 if it ever gets out there on offer, but with the injury to Dak, it might probably not get there. We'll wait and see on Sunday night whether the money comes for Dallas or not. But 5 of the last 6 games between these two teams in Philly have gone under 47 points with an average of 34.6 points per game. I can see this being a sort of a low-scoring affair. I think Philly's defense has been much better over the last 6 weeks. The game in Miami aside, I think in terms of weighted DVOA on defense, I think they're in the top half of the league now. I think they're 13th or 14th in the league. So, whereas Dallas have been shredded by like Jeff Driscoll, Mitch Trubisky, and players like that. So I definitely think Philly have a chance to win this game outright. But I think the Eagles, if it gets a +3, is the bet.
37-10 Dallas when they beat Philly about 6-7 weeks ago.
Ancient history.
What's that?
Ancient history.
But I think Philly's roster was in a better state then as well. That's the thing.
Oh, man. Greg Ward Jr. can catch better than Alshon Jeffrey. That's all I'll say. And Nelson Aguilar. James, if you're in a burning building and you had a baby, would you rather Greg Ward Jr. or Nelson Aguilar catch your baby?
Zach Ertz. I'm targeting Zach Ertz every day of the week.
Yeah.
Ward Jr., absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Phenomenon.
Man, trust Junior with Junior. That's all I'll say. KC -5.5 at Chicago. Total is 45. I love the Chiefs here. -5.5. I mean, the line was only 4.5 last week. With Green Bay. And the Chiefs are a much better team than Green Bay. The Chiefs, I think, probably are the second best, potentially could be the second best team in the NFL with the 49ers having some injuries. And, you get the Saints out of their dome, just in terms of everything that the KC can win in so many different ways and environments. You saw them in the snow and in the elements that the Chicago weather's not going to bother them at all. They're a solid defensive team. They're being slept on in terms of their defense. They're playing really, really well. They've swept their last 4 games outright and against the spread. They've yielded fewer than 11 points per game during that streak on defense. And Mahomes just, as I said, seems impervious to the weather and all those ailments that kind of have injured him for the first half of the season. Chicago's pretty much kaput. And their offense was horrendous last week against the Green Bay defense. That's very overrated, whereas the Chiefs defense is very underrated. I'm going to take the Chiefs minus 5.5.
Massive spot for the Chiefs this week. I think you're 100% right. I think that people are sleeping on the Chiefs. Great on offense, great on defense this season. Slowly just starting to kind of pull away from the rest of the pack. Behind them on Stats Insider's NFL futures, you've got the Ravens, the Saints, Pats, and the Niners ahead of the Chiefs. Over the last month, I think the Chiefs have come from about 10th or 11th on that table to sit 6th behind those other guys. 5th behind those other guys, and just separating themselves from the rest of the pack. They are quietly a very good football team again, and I think that they win this fairly easily. Chiefs minus 5.5 easily.
Yeah, Chiefs with minimal fuss for me as well. Limited attacking teams are a big part of a nutritional diet where the KC Chiefs are concerned. Look no further than what they did last week against Denver and why they've beaten Denver 9 times in a row. Also still in the hunt for that 2 seed, as you guys spoke about. So they're right on the heels of Baltimore and New England. But yeah, sort of, it's the opposite of New England in terms of it's similar as well. You gotta bring a good offense to topple these really good teams. And Chicago, seriously, it's really concerning what they do in attack. So Chiefs easily.
All right. Well, I think if we're all minus 5.5 on the Chiefs, I think we should just do the lock of the week right now, and we're going to lock up the Chiefs minus 5.5.
Ring the bell.
Sounds good to me.
Chiefs minus 5.5 is our lock of the week. All right. Last game, potentially probably the other best game of the week here. Green Bay at Minnesota. Also, sorry, the Chiefs. If Buffalo do beat the Pats, and the Chiefs win out, the Chiefs get the 2 seed. So, they'll be cheering on Buffalo. I know the Pats have been great this season, but them losing to Buffalo isn't surprising. So, there's a lot to play for the Chiefs. Anyway, Green Bay at Minnesota. Minnesota minus 5.5. The total is 45. I like Minnesota minus 5.5 here. I just think they're a better team than when they played each other all that time ago back in week 3. In their week 3 win over the Vikings, the Packers defense allowed 7 yards per play. That's 0.9 more yards allowed per play than the league's worst defenses have allowed this season. So how the hell did the Green Bay Packers win 21-16? Kirk Cousins tossed 2 picks, lost a fumble, and so did Stephon Diggs lose a fumble as well. And so I think that kind of plays into it. I think Kirk Cousins is so much safer with the ball now over the last 6 weeks than he was early on in that season. And then now the Vikings have played such a tougher schedule. They're more battle-tested. They're back at home where they've been really good at home. The Packers' strength of schedule over the past 10 games has been a little suspect in terms of quality of opponent. During that stretch, they faced 8 teams with records at or below .500, and their 2 other games was a 7-point win over the Matt Moore Kansas City Chiefs and a 37-8 hammering by the San Francisco 49ers. Kirk Cousins is he's got a 33% win percentage straight up in prime time and 30% against the spread. That's horrendous, but, Aaron Rodgers, 54% straight up, 49% against the spread in prime time. A lot better. But I think, Kirk Cousins, if you could rewrite that narrative of him and this team heading into the playoffs, I think it's a win here at home and over the Packers. I just think the Vikings are a better, well-rounded side, and I think they win this game.
I agree the more well-rounded team with probably a better postseason status, but I'm happy to take the 5.5 points here with Green Bay, which is a lot. And the whole Dalvin Cook thing, that is concerning me. I was about to say it was the second year in a row he's broken down, but he broke down early last year, and I was just looking at his stats at the end of his Florida State career. His last 4 games in uniform as a Seminole, 108 yards, 225 yards, 153 yards, and 145 yards, and about 10 touchdowns in those games as well. So he finished it off pretty well to become a second-round draft pick in the NFL. But the problem is, if he isn't in there, it takes away that play-action threat that Cousins has and that Vikings offense can function off. He's got 1,221 yards operating out of play-action, which is the second best mark in the league. And I think so if the run isn't there, that's going to be a bonus for the Packers, who we know are very vulnerable against them, and they're 25th overall in DVOA. So I think that keeps the line alive for Green Bay in this game. But yeah, Minnesota are a better team, but Packers on the points for me.
Minnesota at home is hard to go past them, and the Vikings are just better. They're just better, and they're better at home. They're cooking at the moment. I'm not sure that the run game's going to suffer a whole lot with Cook out. I mean, Dalvin Cook's a sensational player, but the Vikings are very high on their backup running back, Alexander Mattison. The fans have been calling for him to get more action. They want him more carries. He's a threat in the passing game as well. So I don't think that they're going to need to change things too much with Dalvin Cook out, because Madison's just going to slot in and do the same thing. Maybe not at 100% the same level, but I think that they can keep their game plan and their strategy intact enough that they're still going to be way too good. The Packers, obviously, we know that they're really good at home, but even in the last couple of weeks, they've only just scraped past the Bears and the Redskins at Lambeau. Minnesota at home, in Minnesota, just a different beast, and I'm not betting against the Vikings at home. Minnesota -5.5 for me.
Okay. Alexander Mattison can also speak fluent Spanish, so a big bonus over Dalvin Cook, who probably cannot. So just letting you know.
That's going to help in Minnesota.
Yeah, so another tip to the Vikings there. All right, let's go to best bets and long shots. And James, so what's your best bets this week?
Pats -6.5, Jets +3, and Chiefs -5.5. And my long shot is a little bit off football, guys, but Gonzaga, run, don't walk, snap up the $21 that's available out there for them to win the college basketball championship. That is crazy. Gonzaga.
All right. College basketball. Wow. Okay, cool. James, thank you. I just love saying Gonzaga, really. So I'm in. All right, my best bets this week. I'm taking Pittsburgh and the Jets under 37.5. I'm taking Arizona +10 against Seattle. And I'm taking Cincinnati +1 or +1.5. Keep an eye out around that against the Miami Dolphins. My long shot, I touched on Kittle 100+ yards before, but I'm going to take Kittle 10+ receptions at $5.50 as well. I just think he's just going to be a vortex of targets there in that game. For the 49ers against the Rams. So that's where I'm at. Nick, what have you got for us?
I love those Kittle bets. I've got the Saints -3, I've got Miami at home -1, and KC, our lock of the week, -5.5.
All right.
Long shot, I've gone with a Miami play again. I mentioned Devontae Parker earlier. 99+ receiving yards at $2.50. I think that back door is going to be wide open against Cincy. And again, another little play on a double, the Jets +3.5, and the unders in that game at $3.75.
Ooh, I like it. The line and total double. I also like that we have a little head-to-head, Cincinnati and Miami, which is no help to the listeners. But whatever, you decide. Fade or follow me or fade or follow Nick. We'll see how we go. All right, and the Stats Insider models, best bets and long shot this week. What have we got?
The model loves Arizona at the line, as James said earlier.
Yep.
It's a 10% green play on Arizona. Miami, Cincinnati, it's kind of gone both ways. Under 46.5, 6% green play.
That might be the play for the audience. They can't decide.
That might be the
Fade
one.
or follow or just trust the model.
Don't want to listen to Josh? Fair enough. Don't want to listen to Nick? Fair enough. Go with the model.
Yep.
Go the unders.
Makes sense.
And Tampa Bay +3 is a 6% orange play. And the long shot, unsurprisingly, is Tampa Bay at the money line. It's an 8% orange.
Yeah, I like that. I really dig that,
I like
actually.
it too.
Like, in terms of a long shot, I think that's a great play.
That 8% takes them almost back to even money. Bookies, on average, have Tampa Bay about 40% to win that game head-to-head, whereas the model's at about 48%. So it's evening up quite nicely for the Bucks.
Yeah, definitely. I forgot to touch on it as well. Like I tipped up Buffalo money line. That's a good long shot as well. $3.40 against the Pats there. If you shop around for that as well. Yeah, that's where we're at with the model and Stats Insider. It's going to be interesting now. Heading into week 17, the model kind of shuts down a bit, and then it'll revamp obviously for the playoffs.
Yeah, well, I think just as the year goes on, obviously the bookies get sharper and sharper, and there's not a whole lot of people or models that are sharper than the books across a season. NFL in particular, as the season goes on, they just get super sharp. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next week with players missing and a lot less to play for in a lot of cases. So often as you get later in the season, the plays get less and less, and it's harder to find value.
Exactly.
in some of those markets. It's worth keeping an eye on.
Speaking of next week, we will be back next week for kind of a real light show, just given the pure meaningless of a lot of those games. But we'll talk in depth, obviously, about Seahawks 49ers game and bits like that. So it'll just be you and I. So it'll be a very short show next week, probably out on Friday morning or Friday afternoon. We'll work that out. But it's business as usual. Despite all the Christmas breaks, that Nick and I are just going to take some time away from Christmas ham and family.
Power through.
We're going to take a break from in-laws and record a podcast about football. We're the real heroes here.
That's right.
Exactly. So
real heroes don't wear capes.
Yeah, exactly. One last thing, live NFL coverage is on Stats Insider. So if you're betting live or just want to follow the likelihood of your bet saluting, or there's no better place to follow the NFL than statsinsider.com.au with live scores, in-play match probabilities from kickoff from every single game. So just go to statsinsider.com.au/live or statsinsider.com.au/NFL. You can follow Stats Insider on Twitter at Stats Insider. You can follow us at Woot and Y, and they can follow you as well, Nick. What's your handle?
Yeah, at Nick Splitter. Pretty easy.
That's it. And I'm at JYNFL. Until next week. Peace.